In today's episode, Liz is going to be explaining to us how she managed to grow her creative business by stepping out of her comfort zone. Liz is such an inspiration, and I just loved talking to her today because she explained how creativity grows from being uncomfortable and from using what you have and making the best of the opportunities that come on your path. So I know that you're going to love this episode. It is going to be such an inspiration, and you've got to bring a notebook along because there are a lot of juicy nuggets that you're going to be wanting to carry forward in your creative practice. Let's get into it.
Gotta get messy and show the world you growing as an artist. And you're free to be yourself. You got a dream, you need to start it. Stick together. Get messy says you're formally invited to a community where you can find people that spark the feel of excitement. Too many art supplies, not enough time. No, it's tougher, so you must find a way to feel some connection. We got a lot of people with the same kind, a great mind. We're here for you, a platform so we can hear your views. Time's yours, forget chores. I know you bored of them same rules.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Get Messy podcast episode. Today, I am going to be chatting to Liz, and I am so excited to be able to explore all things bookish with Liz. So, Liz, thank you so much for saying yes, for joining me for this episode. And could you perhaps introduce yourself to everyone that's listening today?
Oh, well, thank you for asking me, and I'm glad we managed to get the time zones right. And so I'm Liz Constable from Book Art Studios, originally from Manchester in the UK, but I've lived in New Zealand now for longer than I lived in England. So I've got I suppose, a little bit of a mashed up accent. And so I work from my home studio in West Auckland in New Zealand.
Oh, fantastic. And you are predominantly into book binding and creating papers and things for your journals. Is that correct?
Yes. I started out making books, and over the years it's kind of gone into a variety of channels, but at the heart of everything are books. So if I have to introduce myself and I've got a friend who says, keep it short, because I like to embellish and storytell and all the rest of it. But at the heart of everything are handmade books. And then there's certain channels. So there's the published books. So I like to write about how to make books. I teach people how to make books. So I'm a teacher of the book arts. And then I like to make books, obviously. So these days I work in collections. I make a group of books at the same time and then put those up for sale. And I mean, if you said to me, Liz, you can only do one of those, I'd be really hard pushed to say, have to pick one, because I love all aspects of my business and because it's all around bookmaking. And so I guess, if I had to pigeonhole myself, I would say a book artist who writes. That's probably how I describe myself.
Yeah, I think books, it's actually, books are magical, right? So it's quite special to dedicate yourself to making books, to the whole process. As you say, there's so much more. Like, making books feels very limiting, but there is so much in making books, right? As you say, so many different avenues.
Yeah. And when I started over 20 years ago now, New Zealand is a very sports focused country. And so I started a handmade book making business in a recession in a country that's obsessed with sports. making a niche product that hardly anyone really wanted. And so it was a baptism of fire. But I couldn't not do it. I could not do it. And it wasn't until the internet came along, that social media came along, and I actually realized how many people in the world loved handmade books. Actually, I have to say there was a step before that, before the internet. When I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2015, so that was, I think we were just kind of, I think we had Facebook at that stage, but it was still relatively new. And when I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair, I was kind of at a crossroads. I thought, are my books rubbish? Is that why no one's buying them? It's funny going back and revisiting this, because but it's an integral part of the story to think that at some point I was so lost and couldn't kind of figure everything out. But I was at Frankfurt Book Fair and I thought, are my books rubbish? Is that why they're not selling? And then people came along and they picked them up. First of all, they asked if they could pick them up, and then they stroked them, and then they held them to them, and they just said, we've never seen anything like this before. And it suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't found my audience. That was all that was missing. It wasn't that my books were rubbish. It wasn't that I was no good at what I was doing. It was that they weren't connecting to the audience. And so that was the beginning of, actually, clearly my audience. I mean, don't get me wrong. I had done a lot of commissions in New Zealand. But the thing about Kiwis, which I absolutely love, is they like to know how to do things themselves, because that's the Kiwi spirit. So that's when I realized that they didn't want to buy my books. They wanted to know how to make my books. So that's when the teaching came in. And so, but I still wanted to make books and sell them. So that kind of came a little bit later, when Instagram came along and the internet and Zoom and all of those wonderful things, and StreamYard and, all these platforms. And then I realized I could sell online. And that, I have to say, that was magical. That was a magical discovery. It really was.
So you ship your books internationally at the moment?
Yes, everywhere. Okay. And anywhere where they'll go, except I do have a trouble sending them to Bermuda of all. I'm pretty sure it's Bermuda. But
sounds about right.
Yeah, I have to take them to England and ship them from there. That's the only country where I can't ship directly that I've come across. But otherwise, I mean, part of me wishes I'd had a map up on the wall and put little pins in, so I knew.
Yes.
Because honestly, they have gone everywhere. They've gone all around the world. They really have. And I mean, I just sent one yesterday to Ohio. Is that how you say it? Ohio? And I just put, I'm thrilled to be sending this to you. And I thought, I still am. I still can't believe that someone who literally lives in the garage, I mean, I don't live in my garage, but I work in the garage, which is my studio. So it feels like it. I can't believe that my work goes out all over the world. It is a dream come true. It really is.
Oh, that is so special. And back to your Frankfurt experience, especially as you're saying with the internet, we can see things, we can see journals, but there's so many times where I see a journal and I think I just want to be able to climb through the screen and just, as you say, stroke it and just hold it and feel it. That is the power that books have. It's amazing to see.
Oh, absolutely. And because I was so poor, and I just did everything I could. I was cleaning all my friends' houses to raise the money to get over there. So I had one suitcase. And so within that suitcase, I literally, I mean, I think I had about 3 outfits that I'd get back to the hotel at night, wash them, put them on the radiator, dry them and wear them again the next day. The rest of it was my stand and the books. And so in order to kind of present myself, I made a portfolio. And that portfolio showcased my work. And I just remember this man from Berlin picking it up and looking at it. And it turned out he was from the Reader's Digest. And he said to me, that's not a portfolio. He said, I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of portfolios in the work I do. He said, that's a work of art. He said, I have never seen anything like this before in my life. He said, it is just wonderful. And so the things that I did out of kind of, no other choice. So out of desperation or, okay, I can't take a whole lot of stuff. I know I'll make a portfolio and that will showcase my things. That became my point of difference. And it reminded me of, I don't know if you know the story of Anita Roderick, who started up the Body Shop, but she didn't have a lot of money to spend. So she painted her shop green because of the mold that was in the shop. She wrote, did handwritten labels because she couldn't afford to print them. And she did different sized bottles because she could only afford to create so much formula. So, so many products. She couldn't do a huge range. So she had the idea, what if I do a body wash, but I put it in different size bottles, so that will fill up the shop. And those things that she did became her brand, became her iconic brand. And so often as artists, we're there thinking, oh no, I'm so desperate, or, what can I do to make this work? And that's when the magic happens, because without realizing, I mean, I had my stand in my suitcase and I was on the floor. I'd borrowed an iron and I was ironing the material. And across from me, they had cherry pickers and they were putting up walls. They were making reception areas. They were, putting out the tables and chairs. I had the cheapest stand and I'm literally, got stick-on hooks. I'm rubbing with alcohol and sticking up the hooks and putting up my stand. People were coming in and I'd turn on and they'd be stroking the walls of the stand. And it drew people in because it was different. Yeah. So, and it's really scary and challenging being different, especially when I was one of 7,000 people. And most of them looked like a bookshop. And then there was me. And so that made an absolute impact. But when you're trying to present yourself as a professional, I thought, I don't want to look kooky and, I want to present myself as being professional. But it worked because I got a publishing contract out of it. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I've got a sign that stays up here in front of me. I can see it right now. I look at it every day. It says comfort kills creativity. Yes. And I think like this is exactly what your story is saying, right? Like because you were forced to make something out of nothing, your creativity was able to be the shining light.
Yes. And because when I started off, I really was a poor, starving artist. And I know that, we're not meant to say that because it's, you're meant to say I'm an abundant artist, but I really was poor, starving artist. And when I started teaching, I had chopping boards from the kitchen as the cutting boards. I had my daughter's safety scissors. I had one ruler between everyone and but someone like, can I have the one ruler? Can I have the one knife? And, I just had to make a start somehow and then build it up from there. And to this day, I don't actually go out and buy a lot of materials. And it's not because I can't. but it's because I learned to make the very most creatively of what I had. So instead of skimming across the surface and buying the next shiny thing, and there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a criticism. But instead of doing that because I couldn't, I had to go deeper and bring out the materials and say, how else can I use these? And that was really when incredible discoveries happened. And I thought, wow, I didn't know you could do this with gesso. I didn't know you could do this with, I'd go to our rubbish tip down the road, and they had a room full of paint where, people had thrown, and they'd rescued it and put it in the shop. And I'd buy cans of paint for $2-3 and bring it home and see what I could do with that rescued paint. So, like I say, to this day, I still kind of work like that, because that's the way I find out really interesting things about myself and my work as well.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. And I love that you've been able to carry it forward, right? As you say, it's not that you can't afford new shiny things now, but it's just so embedded in who you are and in how you create, which I think is really beautiful. You're staying authentic to that creative voice, right?
Oh, absolutely. And my classes and some of my books have come from a result of that. So, for example, I have a class where, we take old canvas paintings that you buy from a thrift shop or an opportunity shop or a charity shop, whatever they're called, for a few dollars, and you work with the canvas on the frame and then cut it off and turn it into a journal. And that is, that's next to nothing, but it's, you can get incredible results with that. And so when I say to people, use what you have, I really mean that. I know that it's sort of like I don't know about you, but sometimes that's kind of overused. Use what you've got, and people go, oh, what does that even mean? But really, if you look around, and most people, if you're a creator, you will already have what you need. You really will.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Often it's almost like a throwaway or a gloss over statement. You use what you have, and then here's the supply list, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Use what you've got, but get these, And I think that a lot of people must have been really burned by those supply lists, because with my class, Guiding Onto Heaven especially, I get people messaging saying, oh, I'm keen to do the class, but because I don't release the supply list until a person's bought the class, because it's a little bit kind of commercially sensitive. And so it's a bit hard, because they're saying, I want to sign up for your class, but you're not telling me what I need, and I do not want to have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars. Don't tell me you need this special pigment ink that's grown on the hills of the Himalayas under the moon on the 4th month of a year when there's only a naught in it, and you go, what? It's like cooking. You go, what ingredient is that? Where on earth do I get it from? So people need to know that they don't have to go out and spend a lot of money. So I just say to them, if you spend more than $15 American, that's way too much. Because, for example, you can use, I tell people to look in the cupboards. Have you got hair dye, food coloring? Have you got, just use what you've got. And it really does mean use what you've got.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so I'm interested in book camp. You mentioned that you'd just come back from book camp. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. Book camp started, I think it was around about 2017, when I was in Australia teaching at Fibre Arts. and I was sitting around having a glass of wine with a group of Australian women, and great ideas come about as they do. And someone said, I think we should come to New Zealand and work with you, and we should do some kind of a retreat. And so this was in April, and she said, we'll come to you, and I think we should work over a few days. I think it should be the first week of December, and step out of the kind of crazy Christmas time. So I said, okay. So December that year was our first book camp, and I think there were about 10 or 11 of us, and I hit the jackpot with the venue. I hit the jackpot with two things first off: the venue and the caterer. So the venue is literally 5 minutes away from me. Excuse me, 5 minutes away from me, maybe 8 minutes away from me. 3 minutes is taken up going down the driveway of the venue. And it's literally in this incredible forest-like settings. And so I managed to secure that. And then I went to a local cafe and said, do you cater for small groups? And they said they did. And the food is spectacular. So we did it, and it was great. And we had so much fun. So I just carried on doing it. And the thing about book camp is it's the only thing that's the same is we have it at the same place, we have the same caterer, and everyone gets their own room, and we create in the same room. But every year it just evolves. It's highly experimental. And I always say to people, I don't go to book camp to do my best work. I go to book camp to do my most experimental work. Mm-hmm. And that takes the pressure off you straight away. So that's the place where you can do really weird, wild, strange, odd, or completely normal things. Some people will go off and have multiple cups of tea, will sit down, do a little bit of work, go and have a nap, come back, go and have a walk, come back, and someone else will be glued to the seat and literally only leave to eat and sleep, and the classroom is open 24/7. So we'll have really early birds in there. We'll have people still creating at 10:30 at night, and it's basically a free for all. And I say at the end of every book camp, you would never think we were all in the same book camp, because the creations are so unique. They really are. So we have a theme, and this year it was Cabinet of Curiosities, and you can you're in the driver's seat, so you can do whatever you want with that theme. And because of that means it's not a cookie cutter class, and there's nothing wrong with a cookie cutter class, but this isn't that. This is for people who want to really extend themselves creatively. And it means that everyone will just delve into their imagination, and depending on what they're drawn to and what they're interested in, that's what they produce. And I also do book camp online, and that's with people from all around the world. And we've just had our last session, and we had this exact same theme. And honestly, I was, again, you had someone who made books kind of like body parts. So she had lungs, books that looked like lungs, and just kind of concertinaed and breathe as if they were breathing. And then you have someone else who's done an actual cabinet. And then you have someone else who's made the cabinet within the book. I mean, the interpretations are really quite stunning, absolutely stunning. So, yeah, it's quite a wild and wonderful event.
It sounds really exciting. It sounds amazing.
It is. And interestingly, I don't know if you know this, but next year's the last one.
No, you can't get us all excited and then say it's the last one. Why is it the last one?
I don't know. And this is where it gets really interesting, because I'm very intuitive. And when I work, I was just saying this today in a group, that I sometimes call myself a book whisperer. So I'll pick up a book when I'm working, and I'll hear it needs 3 dots out of just paper. I hear or I see what it needs, and so I go with that. And when I was getting ready for book camp, I thought, or I heard, next year's the last one. And I thought about that, and I thought, why would that be? And it feels to me like I need to make space for something else, but I don't know what that something else is. And so I kind of honor those. I'm not the kind of person who holds on to things out of desperation, or holds on to something just because it's doing really well. I'm not afraid to let go of it and put myself back out into the unknown. And I think as an artist, the more you do that, the more you trust yourself, the more adventures you have, the more interesting. If you keep yourself slightly on that edge, then that's quite an intriguing place to be. In fact, I just saw a clip of David Bowie the other day. He said, you need to take yourself, imagine that you're in the ocean, and you're walking along until your feet just don't touch the bottom. He said, that's where you want to be as an artist, where you're slightly off the floor. You're not drowning, but your feet aren't on the ground. And so I made the decision to make next year the last one, and then see what's going to fill the void.
Oh, that's exciting. It's exciting. And I think a lot of people don't realize that is exactly what you need to do, is create that void, that vacuum, right? You have to let go before something else can come in. You need to make that space.
You really do. And it's interesting, because I would say book camp is now at its most popular. And this year, just gone, we had someone from Germany, someone from America, 2 ladies from Australia, and some people, and all over New Zealand. And next year we've got also an international book camp as well. We've got people coming from America, Canada, I think, as well. So and Germany again, and Australia. So it's absolutely at its it's most popular. And yet, and when I think about something like, I loved Friends. I don't know if you ever watched Friends, the series, and they left on a high.
Yeah.
And it was the right thing to do, even though we, those of us who loved it were like this, no, you can't leave us. But no, no one wanted to just carry on watching something for the sake of it. And I never want to do something just for the sake of it. There has to be passion and intrigue and interest in there.
Yeah. My aunt always says you need to leave the party when you're enjoying yourself the most. That's when you need to go home. The moment you think, oh, this is the best party ever, or I'm having the best time ever, then it's time to go home.
You couldn't put it better. Honestly, that is spot on. You've hit the nail on the head. Definitely. And that's kind of how it feels. So next year is Booktopia, the last hurrah.
Oh, I love that. And it's so good, because we keep coming back to that. You really honor that voice, right? You've got such a strong connection to your intuition and to your creative voice, and you listen, you act on what you hear and what you're feeling. I think that's really inspiring.
And especially even when it sounds or feels weird, odd, doesn't make sense. I don't even think I'm going to like it, or any of those judgment thoughts. I just ignore them, and I just do it anyway. And then I'll find out whether I actually do like it or not. Because you've got to allow yourself to be in a position where you find out whether you like what you've done. If you're playing it safe all the time, then you're never really going to be introduced to yourself and your own creativity. You're always going to keep yourself at arm's length to that part of you that has all the answers. So if you just keep pushing, the barriers or the boundaries or whatever you want to call it, just push them, just push them a little bit more. It doesn't have to be a horror ride. It's not like a roller coaster where you're terrifying yourself. You can just dip your toe in the water and then say, oh, I might just put my ankles in now, but just be adventurous. And I think the biggest thing in all my years of teaching adults, the number one thing is, what if I make a mistake? What if I make a mistake? So what if you make what? So what if you make a mistake? Who cares? What does it matter? You'll learn from it. And I don't know why that's such a big deal, especially when that's not something we were born with. That is learned. So it can
Yes. I was just going to say, it's those school years, right? It's all those red X's that we had all over our paper, and you were doing some creative writing and feeling like it's the best thing ever, and you get your mark back, and the teacher's like, you see all these spelling mistakes, and it's those red circles, and that's where it is from. What if I make a mistake?
Oh, look, when I was 16, I remember being around a round table in the art room, and we had to put our work on the table, and it was, I don't know, maybe we'd drawn a bowl of fruit, and as the teacher marked it, you took your work off the table. So she started with A+, and the last person who had their work on the table, who got, I don't know, C- or whatever, was me. So that message was, you're no good at art. You're no good at art. So I was surprised as anyone when it was apparent that I was an artist, because I didn't know that. For years, I didn't know that. I had no idea I was an artist. It was my third business. So Book Art Studios is my third business. I had no idea at all. So you're absolutely right. That's what we've kind of got to wade through.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's so many stories, Liz, so many fantastic stories. You've got such an interesting journey of how you've gotten to where you are. I want to know.
Yeah, I have. But you know what, though, Claudette, the interesting thing is that everything I've been through is so relevant, because my first career was as an early childhood teacher, and then I bought the childcare centre. So my first teachers really were the children, and so they taught me to be playful. And then I learned about being a business person through that. And then I went into life coaching and career coaching, and so that kind of coaching aspect. So I was still teaching and coaching, and that's been the one constant all the way through. And then realizing that I wanted to do art and make an art-based business. So all of those past experiences, that's what I've built on to where I am now. So it's really, and especially the storytelling aspect as well with the children.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to that journey, right? You just followed the process. You just trusted that this was the next step. You didn't know where it was going, but each step led to the next destination.
Yes. I just remember I was only 31 and I walked into the childcare centre and the noise hit me. And I thought, I don't want to still be singing Do Your Ears Hang Low? You know, do you know, I don't know if you know that song, Do Your Ears Hang Low, Do They
Yes.
Wobble?
It's going to be stuck in my head now.
I don't want to still be singing that when I'm 60 and sitting on a chair that high off the ground. You know, and again, you know, I'd go to meetings where there were women in the 60s who were still singing Do Your Ears Hang Low, Do They Wobble To and Fro in their 60s and sitting on tiny chairs because they wanted to. But I didn't. And I had a really successful business. I built it up and it was at the pinnacle of success. And I left the party. I was having a great time and I left the party. And I put myself in a very challenging financial situation for the next longest time. But I couldn't stay where I didn't want to be anymore. I just couldn't do it.
Oh, well, that's very brave. It's brave to be able to feel it and act on it.
Yeah, it was a challenge. Not been an easy ride, but I'm not the sort of person who can do something just for the money. Sometimes I really wish I was. It would have made my life a lot easier in some ways. But I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about publishing. Obviously, when you were at the book fair, you were not thinking, I'm here because I want to write a book.
No.
So that was another uncomfortable thing that you did, right?
Oh, I tell you, I haven't got it with me, but I had written a small book called One Small Drop. It was a short story. And when publishers found out I was taking that to the Frankfurt Book Fair, they were they said, you're taking a short story to the world's biggest book fair. And I said, yeah. And they were like, there's just one book, a short story. And I said, yeah, I am. And I will say at this point that it was my 50th birthday. So I wanted to climb a creative Mount Everest. I wanted to set myself a goal that I really didn't know if I could achieve it. So I took it along. And then when I was there, this couple walked past and she looked over and she just literally grabbed her partner and dragged him in. And they were like this, what is this? You know, and it transpired that he was a publisher, an Austrian publisher. And they did a series of DIY books. So make your own soap, make your own pot puree, you know, and basically make your own paper, anything. And he said to me, do you think that you could make a book about, you know, make your own books? And I said, sure. No idea how to do that, what that would involve, you know. And so we started having Skype sessions when I got back. And, you know, I had never written a book like that before. It's, you know, when you pick up a book and you see the format and you see the, you know, the contents and everything flows, and then you've got the forward and you've got all the parts of it. It seems so obvious and simple, but when you are the person doing all of that and you've done it before, it's really hard. It's really
I can imagine.
And then it had to be translated into German because it was being sold in, you know, German in Europe. So it was, you know, one of the hardest things. And then, so at one point there was me, the photographer and the translator, and we were all squeezed together having a Skype, because it was Skype in those days. And the photographer said to the the Austrian publisher, so how are you how are the sales doing? And he said, oh, it's not good. It's not good. He said, we've only sold 700. And we all went like this. We all leapt up and went, yay! high-fiving and all the rest of it. And he's saying, no, you maybe didn't understand. It's only 700. And we're going, 700? He's going, that's terrible. It's terrible. We're going, right, 700. So then a publishing house in New Zealand said, we'd like to publish it in English. So a year later, the English version came out. And then there was always talk of doing, another book. And so I started that and then realized that actually I'd like a shot of self-publishing. And so at first I said to my sister, who's a graphic designer, would you just do would you try a few different things so I can approach big publishers, see if I can, get the next book out there. And then we realized, so she did all of this and we had great photos to work with. And so she said, okay, I'll just do this for you and you can see, and we loved it so much. I said, why wouldn't we do it ourselves? And so the three of us worked so well together. Then the next one was Dining Unto Heaven, and we just carried on doing that. But publishing books is a massive undertaking. I don't know if people realize what's involved. And people are, now if I pick up a book I don't particularly like, I just say, wow, look at all the work in there. Well done, you. And I put it down. I used to be terrible. Oh, look at rubbish. I don't want to read that. Now I can really appreciate the work that goes into it. Yeah, it's a big job.
Well.
But
Yes, I can imagine.
Oh, I'm so proud of the books that we've done. Massively proud. I mean, I'm not a best-selling author. I'm not the, blah, blah, blah. But I'm really happy with the books and so proud of them. And that's, and the feedback that people have given is just wonderful.
And you can get I think Died in Heaven, I'm not sure about the others, are available as a PDF or as a digital download.
Yes, because yesterday this one went out of print. So I've sold all the copies now. And I'm not sure when I will go back into print because it's so expensive to do a print run.
It's just nice to be able to know that it's not going to get lost in shipping or, whatever. So it's just nice to know that you can get that book in your paws.
Oh, so. Absolutely. And also, shipping from New Zealand this is the thing about being a small business. You can't compete. You can't compete on things like shipping. You can't sell a book for, $48 and then give free shipping because you would literally just be giving it away. And, so it's interesting. And again, this is where being an artist and being creative comes in. So you say, okay, I can't do that, but what can I do that makes it a point of difference? So I wrap my books in hand-dyed paper. It comes with a hand-cut postcard. I put a little pack of goodies in with it, so that when I had someone who wrote to me and said, your parcel arrived today. I'm still at the stroking it stage.
Oh, I love that.
You don't get that with other certain companies, which I won't name.
Yeah. Oh, but that's why you need to, as you say, as an artist, you have to find a way to make it different and to, I don't know. It's difficult sometimes.
You do. Even, your promotion. So, when I've given out my postcards, people have said, "Oh, sorry, how much are these?" And I've said, "No, this is my card, my business card." And they've gone, "This is your business card." I can keep this. Yes, it's for you. Oh, that's the impact that you want to make. You want to get them at hello. And the thing is, if you're a
Yeah.
creative person, that is your calling card. It's the same for anything, whether you've got a website, what how you send out your products or items, and when you meet people, what you give them, like a hand cut postcard. You've really got to represent yourself as an artist, and so that's an easy way to. And if you haven't got much money, just make them by hand, zip them through the sewing machine, put something interesting. People love that, especially people who are not creative. I mean, everyone's creative, but not actively being creative. Yeah.
And I think it comes back to that idea that things are so commercialized, right? So you feel like it's only valuable if it's got this glossy packaging and looks a certain way. And people are drawn to, as you say, like stitch it, to cut it by hand. People are drawn to that personal touch in your things. And I think a lot of us have forgotten that. And we sort of look at the commercialized stuff and we think this is the standard. But I think there's more value. It's richer when it comes directly from you.
Oh, definitely. I remember years and years and years and years ago when I really, was just really getting into making books. And I went to a wedding and I'd made the couple a wedding album, and I wrapped it in material, and I went to put it on the table, and there were all these commercially wrapped, with paper, and like they'd had them wrapped at the shop where they bought the present. And I nearly didn't put it on the table because I thought, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake. I'm making a complete fool of myself by doing this. And that's why I think we pull ourselves back sometimes as artists, because the very thing you need to do, which is to reach in and bring out your individuality, is the thing that terrifies a lot of people, because then you'll stand out.
Yeah.
You can't help but stand out when you do that. And that's what makes people pull back sometimes, because they don't want to stand out. They want to kind of be in the shadows. But if you really want to get to the good stuff, then you have to be prepared to stand out. And that doesn't mean going on the stage and, all those kind of things, but don't hide your light, don't hide that light, because the world needs these little beacons of light. It really does, more than ever at the moment.
Absolutely. I agree. I absolutely agree. And I want to maybe say, not necessarily that they want to be in the shadows, but they want to just be in the crowd, just blend into the crowd.
Follow the crowd. Absolutely.
You want to look like everybody else. You don't want to stand out.
Definitely. There's absolute, I 100% agree. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But if you want to reach inside yourself as an artist and really get to that good stuff, you have to be prepared. It's not an easy journey. It does challenge you emotionally. It does take you into, it takes you through doubt. You have to be prepared to go through the layers of doubt, judgment, even maybe hatred is too strong a word, but sometimes I look at my work and I think, you think I'd never done this before? What on earth is that? The ugly phase, whatever. We've all got these names for them, and be prepared to come out the other side. But that's the adventure. That's the adventure of it. And I tell you, we're the lucky ones the creators are the lucky ones. We really are. There was a family thread discussion recently about my one of my cousins had just turned 55 and he was saying, oh, I thought I'd be retired by now. That was my goal. And, a couple of aunties said, oh, we were retired at 55. And I was thinking, and I said, I would cry if I had to be retired right now. I would literally curl up on the floor and bawl my eyes out if I had to retire. I don't ever want to retire. I love what I do. I love playing.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Okay, so what I've written down here is, as an artist, you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes, that's a really good way of putting it. Definitely. Yeah, you do.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for chatting to me, Liz. It's been so inspiring to hear your journey and your thoughts on creativity. And I just know that everybody listening is going to be so fired up for their creative practice after listening to this episode. Thank you so much.
I hope so. And thank you so much for asking me. I've really enjoyed this. And I'm really glad that we, managed to find a time that worked for us. And thank you so much for your questions. I really enjoyed that.